Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me today for our live stream seminar, part 3 of the Real Estate Buyers series. Buyers, are you ready? Today's topic is about the importance of having and understanding title and escrow. We're also streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, 易直播, Weibo, and TikTok. Today, we're going to be speaking with an expert who knows everything about title and escrow. Hi, my name is Coco Tan. I'm a realtor with Keller Williams Realty in the San Francisco Bay Area. If you wish to receive the latest videos and seminar updates, please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I have a big QR code right here on my wall. Today's topic is about the title and escrow, the entire process and things to look out for. That's why I invited a specialist to help us understand this process better. Our guest today is Richard Chen from Chicago Title Company. Richard is the AVP and Business Development Executive of Chicago Title. He's an expert on escrow and title. Richard is in his 17th year in the real estate industry and 15th year in the title industry. Having a multifaceted industry background, Richard is known for his knowledge of title and escrow and analytical foresight into solving issues. Prior to 2009, Richard served on the board of directors to Chinese American Real Estate Association and also Asian Real Estate Association of the East Bay. Richard has been regularly invited to speak on how to navigate the unique aspects of title and escrow to buyers and sellers. Richard travels to different countries several times a year as a liaison between the United States and other countries and has brought together investors and agents across this culture and linguistic divide. Richard assists with language and explains local real estate custom and considerations, and most importantly, educates on title and escrow, an industry that people are not familiar with. Welcome, Richard. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So let's start with the basics, Richard. What is the difference between an escrow company and a title company? Sometimes people refer them to like one company, but do they really have to be one company, or can they be separate companies? And what do they do separately, or do they do something together? Can you elaborate that for us?
Absolutely. It's a great question. Now, Coco, can I share my, I'm going to share my slide. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah, that is a great question. Now, usually every state has a rule that's either, it could be attorney state or it could be a title escrow closing state. So what it does is for East Coast, a lot of state that they have to involve attorneys when they close a transaction. In California and most of the West Coast, we don't need to do that. We just need to have a title company. Now, title company and escrow company are actually two different companies. All right, and usually one state will only do one thing, such as if you're attorney closing state, you just have attorney. You also have title company, but the attorney will close that. But in a title company state, which is like us, usually you just have one title company will also handle the escrow work. But California is such an interesting state because it's very long, very narrow. So what's happening is in Northern California, culturally, you don't see many escrow company because title company will handle the escrow matter. But if you actually go into Southern California, where the escrow is actually closed by the escrow state, we title company only perform the title search and issue the title policy. So it's very interesting that if you're actually coming from Southern California, you feel that, hey, how come I don't see a lot of escrow company, everybody refer title company. But if you're from Northern California, you go to Southern California, you're like, hey, what happened to this escrow company that owned by different people? Where are the title companies? So that's a very interesting question.
Yeah, I know, because I came from the East Coast, and then I remember it was handled by attorney. I don't even remember this escrow company, but all the transactions were handled by attorney.
Yes.
So did they have a title company?
They also have a title company, but title company, East Coast is kind of like Southern California, where the transactions handled separately, where a title company only come in to issue policy, that's all.
Okay.
Of course, we oversee the transaction, but in terms of people who or buyer the seller who are going to be dealing on a daily basis is going to be the attorney or the escrow company.
Is it fair to say that the attorney was actually on the East Coast, attorney was acting as an escrow officer?
Somewhat, yes.
Yeah, okay. So escrow company was pretty much replaced by the attorney on the East Coast, but right here we have escrow company and title company.
Exactly, but in Northern California, the custom is the title company will have escrow business. So you don't really see escrow company right here because the culture-wise, there's no gonna be, people don't really know much about escrow company right here in Northern California. So for escrow company to come out just do the escrow service, they probably won't be able to survive. And that's why you only see title company right here that handle escrow business.
Okay, gotcha. So what is in title insurance really? Why people often ask us, why do we need it? You know, what am I covered? And sometimes when if you buy from foreclosure auction sale, for example, then maybe you don't even have title insurance, right? So basically, can you cover what's the importance about that?
Absolutely. To be honest with you, before I joined this industry, I have never heard of title company. When I first was recruited by title company, I thought this was a tile company that we do tiles. And until later on, people actually, until I come in and I realize, what kind of role that we're playing. So basically, title company, usually the full name will be a title insurance company. As you can imagine that we do insurance. So title companies is actually insurance company. And there are two types of title insurance that we mainly offer. One is called the owner policy, and the other one is called the lender policy. And the owner policy protects your property rights as a home buyer, versus the lender policy ensure the financial investment of the bank or lender. If someone else claims ownership on your property, title insurance typically defends you legally and financially. So for me to explain this, let me show you something real quick. Now, why do we have to have title insurance? In California, let's just go with California. So California is formed by different counties, right? And as we live in Bay Area, we know that these counties are the famous Santa Clara, Alameda, and Contra Costa, right? And Coco, you're in Cupertino, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Cupertino belongs to County of Santa Clara. Now, counties contain all these different cities, and I'm in Fremont, so Fremont is belong to Alameda County. Now, if I were to have a transaction, real estate transaction, and in city of Fremont, after I finish transaction, there's something that I need to do, is which I need to record the transaction. I'm sorry, Coco, is that something I need to do on the?
Yeah. What do you mean?
Oh, never mind. I saw this thing that I have to allow somebody to come in.
Oh, no, you don't have to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So so a lot of people ask that what do we do? What does the government do when there's a transaction, a real estate transaction? Does our government protect our rights? Do they do that? The question is yes or the answer is yes or no, right? The yes part is actually the government actually wants to record the transaction, so they make it a public record that everybody can look it up to see what's happening with the transaction. But in terms of protecting, there's really not much of protection going on. And here's the example. Let's say that if I want to buy a house in Fremont, right? At the end of the transaction, title company is going to send a document to county so they can record it so people know that this house is actually purchased by somebody. Right? But that's it. That's all they do. And if I can show you the grant deed, this is what a grant deed looks like. Now, on the top left corner, you're gonna see this recording requested by. So this is the section where which title company is handling the transaction. And then the next part, it says when recorded mail document and tax statement to. Now you gotta remember that this is only saying that when the document is completed, where do we send this original document to? Now, this does not mean where the property address is located. This is only where we're sending the document to. Now, on the right-hand side, you're gonna see this barcode right here. So in reality, after the document is recorded, it's gonna be a sticker. The county is gonna put a sticker and on this piece of paper, and it tells you that which county is recording the document. And then when did they do it? How much money they take, the money meaning the tax, how much tax they charge, on which date. And that's pretty much about it. And then On the left-hand corner, there's an APN. APN stands for Assessed Parcel Number. So you can think of this as a kind of like ID, right? So this is kind of like ID of the property. Every property has an ID. You can think of that way. And that's it. All right, so this is the document that we're seeing. Now, let me give you an example. Let's say that Richard Chen are going to sell the property to Coco, okay? And I'm going to have to write this document and then record it. So Coco will have the ownership. Now, here's the question, here's the problem. I just told you that you cannot see an address on this grant deed. All you know is this APN number, which refers to a specific location, but it doesn't tell you the address. Now, if I were to tell you that you're gonna pay Coco, if I were to tell Coco that you're gonna pay $1 million to buy my house, and in exchange, I'm going to give you this piece of paper that doesn't even have your address on it. And on top of that, this is called a grant deed. Grant means give, right? So this is a grant deed that I grant the property to Coco. And most likely Coco is not gonna sign on this property. Now, if you were Coco, would you be willing to buy the property under that circumstances?
It's kind of scary, right?
It is very scary. Now, here's another thing. Now, my name is Richard Chen. And I personally, this is kind of simple. This is kind of like John Smith. Yeah, I'm Chinese, right? My name is Richard Chen. I personally know 3 other Richard Chen. Right, so when I write this grant deed, my name is gonna be, for available consideration, Richard Chen grants the property to Coco Tan. Now, it's not simple to do a grant deed. For you to do a grant deed, you actually execute it, you actually have to find a notary public. And if you guys heard about notary public, it's a government issue licensed person that makes sure that you are the right person signing the document. So what notary public usually requires, you have your documentation, which is ID, government issue ID, which is your passport, it could be a driver license. And then at the end of the process, you're gonna have to do a thumbprint. So for Richard Chen to sell the property, sign the grant deed to Coco, I'm gonna have to see a notary public, right? A notary public will require an ID from me. But here's the problem. I'm going to grant the property to Coco. I'm Richard Chen. What if another person whose name is also Richard Chen showed up at the notary public, prepared the same form of document, and then sign it right there? The notary public is not gonna be able to tell that, oh, this Richard Chen is the one that owns this house, and this Richard Chen is not. They don't know that. The only thing they look at is the ID, and this Richard Chen actually has a government issue ID, says that he is Richard Chen, right? So if that happens, Coco is gonna receive, if you do a transaction without title company, then Coco is gonna get a grant deed probably 3 months later from title saying that, oh, okay, Richard Chen actually signed this grant deed to you. And guess what? 2 years later, I showed up, or the real Richard Chen showed up at Coco's door and said, Coco, I'm actually the owner. Now, what Coco have to do is Coco have to give the house back to the real Richard Chen, because the real Richard Chen never have sold the property. It's kind of arguable that, you know, can you sue or can you do something? Well, here's the thing. Now, let's say that the fake Richard Chen got caught after Coco reported to police and realized that she has been conned. But the problem is that Richard Chen already spent all the money. $1 million that Coco gave to Richard, he already spent it. Even though you put that Richard Chen to jail, that doesn't do Coco any good, because Coco at the end of the day lost everything. It could be her entire lifetime saving. That is why one of the most important things for title company to step in is that we ensure transaction to the right owner. So right here, if you see that, do I need to have title insurance, and what am I covered? You see, number one, someone else owns the interest of your title. So we actually we make sure that when we do a transaction, this seller is indeed the seller. Now, for my case, Richard Chen, there's so many Richard Chens out there. So how does Chicago Title know that this Richard Chen is in fact the Richard Chen? Now, Chicago Title might not be 100% sure that this is the Richard Chen, but Chicago Title will have to take the risk to ensure Coco as a buyer that if anything happens in the future, Chicago Title is gonna help to compensate, make sure that Coco doesn't lose money or at least fight for the property for Coco. Right? So that's the main benefit of having title insurance.
They actually insure the whole amount of the purchase price?
Yes, we insure the whole amount. And that is why the premium or fee was charged based on the sale price.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great question.
The lender insurance, lender's policy will be based on, so they just insure the loan amount, correct?
Yeah. In lender, that's another thing that title company insures. Not only we protect your ownership, we also protect debts. Right. Here's another example. Well, let's say that Richard is going to sell Coco another house. And now this time Richard is really the owner. Right. Richard sell the house to Coco for $1 million. Right. Let's say that we didn't go through title company and Coco knows Richard for a long time. So Richard sell the property to Coco for $1 million. What Richard didn't disclose to Coco was Richard owe lender $500,000, which is Richard borrowed money from lender for $500,000. I did not disclose to Coco that. So Coco didn't know that lender put a lien. We call lien, which is another word, which is debt. Lender called the debt, put a debt against my house because I can go somewhere, but my house can't go anywhere. My house is not going to be able to go anywhere. And so that's why if lender were to lend me a huge amount of money, they want to have some sort of security. The way they do that is they put a lien against my house. So in case I cannot repay the lender, they can take away my house and foreclose it to get money back. That's what we know about the foreclosure. So for me to sell the property to Coco, I did not say that I owe lender $500,000 and Coco did not verify that. And she just gave me $500,000, she gave me $1 million. Then after I get the money, I stop paying the lender. What's gonna happen is lender is gonna realize that, oh, we don't get payments anymore. We're gonna have to do something, which is we're gonna have to tell the owner that we're about to foreclose the property. And Coco is gonna get that notice. And then if that didn't go through title insurance, once again, Coco will have to find me to pay for it. If she can't find me anymore, she's gonna have to either pay for that or let the house get foreclosed because the lien was recorded before Coco purchased the property. There's that priority right there. And that's why the lien could be foreclosed first, even though Coco now become the owner.
So that is also like the foreclosure sale when you bought from auction. If you don't know the lien history, those liens could still be existing, right? So even if you paid however much to the bank, but you still have to pay back all the liens.
Exactly. Let's say that if the house is selling for $1 million and there are 3 liens, $500,000, $300,000, and $200,000. Let's say that the 100% money is borrowed. Any lender can foreclose the property. All right. So let's say if the lender of $300,000 forecloses this property because let's say the owner didn't pay for that. And the person who comes into foreclosure, and they can only foreclose how much money they're owed. Let's say $300,000. So a buyer or investor comes in, look at the property, and say, "Oh, this property actually worth $1 million. How come they're only selling for 300?" So they come in with 300. What they didn't realize is when they come in for the middle position, the third one, which is $200,000, could be wiped out. But they assume the first lien, because the first lien is still there, which is $500,000. So they come in, they thought that they paid $300,000 for a house that worth $1 million. What they didn't realize is they still have to pay that $500,000. Otherwise, the house can still be foreclosed by the first lender.
That's right.
Yeah. And that's why lenders, when they lend you money, they want a title policy too. It's called lender's policy. They want to make sure that they're on the first position. So when you purchase a house, you're going to have to pay owner policy and you're also going to have to pay lender policy. Although the lender policy does not protect the home buyer, it only protects the lender. Yeah.
The lender policy will be covered based on the loan amount, correct?
Will be covered based on loan amount, yes.
So the lender will get compensated for the value of the loan amount.
Yeah, in case the lender for some reason, for example, is not at the first position and the house is being foreclosed. Mm-hmm. And the lender's loan will be forfeit. and then they can come back to title company, ask for compensation, just like the owner would do if the house is sold for different people.
That's clear, yeah. So
Yeah.
Richard, can you also cover common ways of holding titles? Because that's always a question coming from buyers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, before I do that, I really want to mention something that's really important. That's another link that people might not be aware of, which is the main reason of having title insurance for owner's policy, to my opinion. This is called mechanics link.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Remember, we talked about all these priorities. Now, people are saying that, okay, so if I have a preliminary title report and I see that all the liens are paid off, then I don't need to buy title insurance anymore, right? Because it seems like the house is clear. Why do I still have to buy title insurance? Owner policy cover one very important thing, is called mechanics lien. Mechanics lien is a lien that protects the contractor. Now, some sellers try to renovate the property and then sell it, but they might not pay their contractor. Or they have paid their contractor, but the contractor didn't pay the subcontractor. So in that case, contractor can always come back within 2 years after the event occurred. They can always come back within 2 years and put a lien against your property. So even though it doesn't look like this house looks perfect and doesn't look like there's any lien against the property, you don't know. Within 2 years, the contractor can always come back and say that, oh, such money was owed because the construction money wasn't paid. So that was the main reason why I think title insurance is very important, because mechanics lien is covered. Okay. And we're going to talk about, Coco was asking about the common ways of holding title. Now, before I go into that, I want to make a disclaimer. It's really important because we're a title company. We're not your CPA, we're attorney. The disclaimer will be, there are many types of tax issues which should be considered during a real estate transaction. Chicago Title provides the following information as a resource only, and always recommended that the seller and buyer consult with their legal and tax professional for advice. All right, so please, you always need to talk to your CPA or your tax attorney. But I can share with you the usual ways that people hold title. How title is vested has important legal consequences and tax consequences. The tax consequences may be different from same-sex legally related couple. You may wish to consult an attorney or tax advisor to determine the most advantageous form of ownership for your particular situation. So what I'm covering right now is more for husband and wife, not the same sex. All right, because it's a very special and relatively new circumstances. So if you're having a same-sex marriage or domestic partnership, you always need to consult your CPA and tax attorney. So that's something I have to say first. Now, the ways to have title, to own house. If you're single, and obviously there's only one way you can do it, only as a single person, right? So the 4 things I list right here, tenants in common, joint tenants, community property, and community property which rather survivorship, are designed for more than 1 people when they want to hold the property. California is a community property state, which means that if the husband bought it, the wife have a piece of it, right? So if a husband wants to own the property sold and separate, what the husband have to do is have the wife to do a quick claim deed or interspousal deed, which the husband would then hold the title as, for example, Richard Chen, a married man, as his sole and separate property. Now, if we're not consider people holding that by a single person, then what's going to happen is if you have 2 or more people, there are the choices that you can do. Let's talk about the first one, tenants in common. If you want to hold tenants in common, the benefit of tenants in common is everybody can own this with any percentage they like. You can divide the property into different portions, and you can will and give or sell your portion to somebody else. Let's say that I own the house with Coco, all right? If she and I choose tenants in common, and Coco can own the house for 70%, and I can own the house for 30%, and I can sell my 30% to anybody I want without Coco's agreement. Vice versa, Coco can do that, or she can even take 1%, I'll take 99%, that is completely fine. So that's tenants in common. And joint tenants, if Coco and I own the property together, and joint tenant, then we cannot divide the interest of a joint tenancy. When we are about to sell the property, we have to sell the property together, right? So in other words, tenants in common is less likely to be something that people usually choose for a regular house. Now, if you want to buy a principal residence, less likely people would choose tenants in common because a principal residence usually something that you will sell in the future. Everybody will have to agree on it. So that's mostly joint tenants. Community property and community property with right of survivorship are something that only husband and wife can have, or domestic partnership. That is something that only people have that title can have that. The difference of community property and community property with right of survivorship is for community property, both of them have step-up basis. And community property, half of the, so if one person died, the surviving spouse, half of the person who deceased, half of the interest goes to the surviving spouse, and half of them, the deceased can actually have a will to designate to anybody the person wants to. This might cause probate, right? If it's community property with right of survivorship, it's the hybrid version of joint tenants and community property, which has the benefit of step-up basis. Also, the surviving spouse will take the property in whole. So joint tenants will have that same effect as well. So anybody who is not coupled, like want to hold joint tenants, if one of the owner died, the other person would just take everything. You don't have to go through probate. Tenants in common will be something that, because you can actually design how much percentage you have in this property, and then will this to somebody. So tenants in common cannot avoid probate. Now, probate is a process that court will administer and find out who the legal successor of this property is. So that's what's called probate. And probate is a very complicated process, and it takes a long time, and also you have to hire an attorney. So imagine two people own the property in tenants in common, and then it just happened that both of them died, right? And even though these two people are a married couple, they only have one child. You would think that the child was supposed to just take the property. In reality, the whole process will still have to go through probate, which the court will have to decide who is the next king of these people are, and also most likely this child will have to hire an attorney to fight for this property. So that's the main difference of ways of holding titles.
So the joint tenants have the right of survivorship, but does not have the step-up basis, right?
It only have half of the step-up basis. Only the person who died has the step-up basis.
So the surviving parties still have to keep the original cost base.
That's correct. Versus community property, that both community property and community property with right of survivorship, they both have double step-up basis.
Got it.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Oh, I was thinking, speaking of those tax advantages, I thought about maybe you can cover Proposition 60, 90, and 58, all those common California property tax savings program.
Absolutely. One more thing for owning title. Now, if you're, how does title company know that you're married, right? We won't know unless you tell us you are, okay? So if for any reason that you forgot to tell us in the transaction that you're married, all right? And you only tell us the day before closing day, you don't have to panic. If you're buying in cash, you can still complete the transaction, but just that because California's property, a community property state, your title will be, for example, Richard Chen, a married person. That's it, right? It does not say a sole and separate property because I did not do interspousal deed to take my wife off the title. All right, so in the future, the next time when I'm about to sell the property, the next title company is going to ask my marital status and then do things accordingly. All right. There are a few property saving programs, property tax saving programs. Proposition 60. Now that is something for people who are 55 years old and older. If they want to buy a new house within the same county, they can actually keep their tax base. But the requirement is they will have to find a house that is less than what they sold the property for. All right. For example, if they bought a house 20 years ago, they bought it for $200,000, and they might be paying $4,000 a year. Now they're selling the property for $1 million, right? And then they find the replacement property for $900,000. They can actually take that over to the new place, and then still exercise the lower tax rate at $4,000 a year. And Proposition 90 is a extension of that program. So every county in California have the rule for Proposition 60, which is as long as you're within the same county, you buy the replacement property within the same county, you can enjoy that benefit. Proposition 90 allows you to do inter-counties. So if you're buying properties in the following counties, you can actually take advantage of that tax base if your replacement property falls under these other counties, which the counties include Alameda, Los Angeles, Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, all these counties that I list right here. And Santa Clara, San Mateo is one of them. So basically, most of the Bay Area counties are included, which means that if you sell your house in Alameda, you can actually find your replacement property and enjoy Proposition 60 if you buy it in Santa Clara. And also there are other ones that people are particularly interested in and exercise that a lot, which is Proposition 58. And that's what we talk about parent-children transfer. And also Proposition 183, that's grandparents to grandchildren. So if you have a parent-children transfer, then you don't, your property is not gonna be reassessed. So the example will be, let's say my dad bought a house in 1995. The house was worth $200,000. And he decided to give the house to me this year, and the house worth $1 million. When I take over the house, my property is not gonna be reassessed by county. I'm still paying whatever tax base that he has been paying. So that's what Proposition 58 is. And Proposition 193 does the same thing for grandparents and grandchildren, but the purpose of this, the parents of the children will have to be deceased, which means that the children of the grandparents are deceased for that to be valid.
Those two are the 58 and 193. Those are for any counties in California.
Yeah, correct.
So when parents give them property to the children, do they need to do a grand deed via a title company, or what do they need to do in order to make it happen? Or do they need to do a transaction?
Okay. You remember I showed you guys the grand deed in the very beginning? All right. It looks like it has a certain format, but interesting enough that the grand deed doesn't have to look the way that there's no form of what the grand deed should look like. It's really the wording that's more important, right? Before, people usually, the first reaction is, okay, I'm gonna have to do a transfer, so I'm gonna go to my title company. We used to handle transactions, well, I shouldn't say transaction, because for us to do a transaction for you, we have to have a sale price. When you have a parents and children transfer, usually people do that as a gift. And therefore, we used to do that as a favor, but we don't do that anymore. The reason behind that is because there's a lot of liability and tax consequences involving that. For example, through the past 10, 15 years, we have seen a lot of people from foreign countries come to our country as investors. Now, what's happening is, if they are foreigners, the minute that they transfer the property to somebody else, a serious set of tax will be put in to assess. It's called FERPTA. And if we help people not knowing their situation and do that, and sometimes people will be like, oh, well, title company told me to do this. And once they realize they're penalized with a huge amount of penalties, they tend to come to us and ask for resolution. But in fact, that we didn't charge anything, but to take that responsibility, title company find out that it's a huge responsibility. So we don't help that with that anymore. But it's very easy. All you have to do is to find a paralegal to help you to prepare a deed and then record that at county, then you'll be down. Of course, what you should do though is always talk to a CPA and a tax attorney before you decide to do any kind of transfer of your ownership. Because based on your tax status, you might actually owe tax, and that might not be the best strategy for you to give the house to somebody else.
So when you transfer from the parents transfer to children under Proposition 58, so you're saying that children can keep the property tax basis?
Yes.
So at what value are they transferring that property to? So for example, if the home, it was, they bought it for 200,000, now it's worth 1 million. So when they transfer to children on the grand deed or whatever deed we're using, what is the price they're transferring?
Well, if you're transferring with a price, that's a different matter. Then you're not really gifting that.
So it's not, so basically it's a gifting. So you're saying they're gifting the
Yes.
property to the children without a value, really, right?
Correct. Yeah. If you have a value attached to that, then you're actually selling it to them, and then there's going to be transfer tax, and those of your property will be reassessed.
Okay, so when you do that, so is a gift tax going to be involved? Do you happen to know that?
I cannot answer that because that would be a question. Yeah, that would be a question that you have to ask CPA.
Okay.
Yeah. But I would strongly encourage to talk to CPA because exactly there might be gift tax associated to that.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's other things that when we do transfer, I really want to make sure that people know that transferring property is a huge matter. It's really something that you have to think about it, especially talk to the CPA. There's also other fees associated to that. All right. And also another thing is you want to consider that when you transfer a property to somebody else, it breaks your title insurance. All right. And then your title insurance will not be valid anymore once the ownership changed. All right. And how is that important? I'll give you one example. Now, title company, do we cover uninsured easement? We might not. But we might actually cover the damage that caused by uninsured easement. What do I mean by that? All right, think about this scenario. Now we actually have a live case where we have a customer trying. Their house is kind of on a weird shaped side. So their house is right here, and then they have a little spot in the back of their yard. They thought they could put an ADU into that. All right, so they start digging, and then not long enough, they find out there's a pipe. Usually, when you dig the ground and you find a pipe, what would you do? You stop, right? You don't do it. You don't do anything anymore, right? It just happened that our customer decided to keep digging and break through that pipe. All right, and then luckily that pipe is actually an active pipe. It just happened that when the time he was digging the pipe, there's nothing running through the pipe. All right, so for that matter, title company might be able to actually help you to reroute that pipe. Of course, there might be deductible involving that, but title company might be able to help you to reroute the pipe. And then, because that will be some easement that we didn't know. Nobody knows about that pipe. Nobody knows the pipe being there. But the homeowner was able to find us, and then after pay the deductible, was able to reroute the pipe, and they can start building their ADU after we reroute the pipe. So that's something that you might want to consider because you never know what's under the ground, right? So if you want to do transfer into the trust, that'll be fine because trust, as long as you are still the trustee, once you transfer the property to the trust, then it's not gonna break title insurance. Otherwise, you should probably find out more to see, to ask yourself a few questions. Did you buy the property before 1998? If you purchased the property after 1998, did you obtain a policy other than the Alta homeowner policy? Have you added endorsement or obtain auto owner policy after purchasing property? So if you answer to yes to either of the first two questions and no to the last one, you probably really should talk to your title company to see what kind of endorsement you can buy before you transfer property to trust. All right. Then it comes to interspousal transfer. By the way, if you want to do a trust transfer during a refinance, and just ask your lender. Most of the lenders are okay with it. Some lender might not, but if they're not, then sometimes we can probably help you prepare a deed, and you can probably put the trust back on. You can put the property back to trust after close of escrow, which will be fine. Just that there are a new set of fees. It might cost you between $75 to $225 to complete that process because of the new SB2. And the last one I want to talk about is interspousal transfer, right? During refinance or after marriage. A lot of people get married, right? And they want to put their wife on title. Now, from the title company standpoint, all right, we don't really care if people do that or not, because when they sell it, we're going to ask that if you're married. If you are, we're going to have the wife to sign it regardless whether the wife was ever on title or not. As long as you're married. But it might work for your tax benefit or for whatever reason that you actually need to see your wife's name on title. In that case, you can always, like I said, find a paralegal and do an interspousal deed, have the spouse name on the title, all right? That's not going to break your title insurance either because it's marriage, right? However, people do interspousal during refinance. That would be a different scenario. Some of the lender, let's say that I'm the only borrower, and the lender say that, okay, if you're the only borrower, you have to be the only owner of title. We have seen that happen in the past. Some lender really strict. They want the borrower to be the only person on title. They don't allow another person. Now, then during the escrow, we'll have to take the wife. For example, if it's my case, I have to take the wife out of the title. We are not going to be able to put your wife back on title afterwards, because if the lender's instructions specifically say that they want the wife's name out, we cannot put it back because that would be a breach of the lender's instruction. It will actually be considered a fraud.
It used to be like you can close without the wife, but then the second day you can add the wife back, but you can no longer do that.
Yeah, we don't do that. We probably let's phrase that. Title companies should probably not do that in the past, right? But they're definitely not doing that right now.
Okay, so does interspousal transfer trigger property tax base change?
No, it does not. However, you just need to be careful that which RNT code. So every time you do a gift, there is a set of code you want to put it associated with on your grant deed. You want to make sure you use the correct code for the one that's husband and wife. The paralegal should know about that. They do that all the time, so they should know which code they should put it on, and there's not going to be any transfer tax.
Many years ago, when I was doing a refinance for a client, I remembered in Alameda County, somehow with interspousal transfer, they still triggered property tax change as well.
Yes, during the refinance is different matter. Some counties will have transfer tax based on the loan amount. Some will actually use the current value.
So transfer tax or property tax. So they're going to assess both transfer tax as well as
not the property tax, but the transfer tax. The transfer tax, yeah. However, there might be ways to avoid that. What you need to do is you need to talk to your title company to see what we can do for you. If you have the correct gift code, if we do something, we try to, if we know that this is a situation, we can manage that ahead of time before closing, you might be able to avoid that, but that's case by case.
Let's assume it's not interspousal transfer. Let's assume just transfer. So if one person wants to add a friend onto the title.
Okay.
So when they do that, the transfer tax will be involved both county transfer tax as well as city transfer tax.
Are you talking about gift or talking about having a price value on that?
I'm talking about, so when you add somebody or delete somebody from the title.
Okay. Is there money involved in that?
No money involved, just adding somebody into the title. Could be for a refinance that they need another person to help qualify. So they just add another person onto the title.
Okay, once again, it depends on case by case, but then I would imagine that if you're doing that alone in the transaction, common thing happens is the transfer tax will be based on a loan amount.
Transfer tax based on loan. So that's
transfer, yeah. And then the property is definitely going to be reassessed.
right. The property tax will be reassessed, but when you talk about transfer tax, is that county transfer tax or city transfer tax?
The county transfer tax.
So there's no city transfer tax involved.
I can't actually city transfer tax.
Depends on which city, I guess, right?
I will have to get back to you on that.
Okay. Okay. So county. Yeah. So the amount will be $1.10 per $1,000 or
dollar 1.1 per thousand. Yes. But it will be, let's say the loan amount is $300,000, right? Then half of that will be $150,000. 1.1 over 1,000 based on $150,000 instead of 300.
So half of the loan amount, you're saying?
Half of the loan amount, yes.
So in the purchase transaction will be $1.10 for the whole purchase amount, right? For the whole purchase price.
Yes.
But for a transfer like this, like not interspousal transfer, but just like adding or deleting a person, that will be based on the loan amount and half of the loan amount.
It could also be the current value. Excuse me. It can also be, depends on which county that is.
Oh, so, okay.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the big difference. Current value is going to be a lot bigger than the loan amount, right?
Yes, and I cannot answer that because I don't know which county that is, and it could be vary. And also you got to remember that this changes all the time. What I tell you right now, it might not be the case 2 years from now.
Okay.
Yeah. So the best way is,
for example, in Fremont, would that be half a loan amount, or would that be a purchase, or would be a value amount?
that would be half of a loan amount.
Half a loan amount in Fremont. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. And yeah, then the last couple of things on the cover, power attorney is another quite important stuff. And power attorney, when you want to have somebody to help you sell the property or sign a document on behalf of you, it has to be a special power attorney. It cannot just be a general power of attorney. So what you will have to do is, if you know that you're selling the property or you're doing refinance and you're not going to be here when the document is ready, you can assign a power of attorney, but you need to obtain a power of attorney ahead of time from title company. It has to be a special power of attorney. And if it's a financing situation, some lender have their durable power of attorney form. So it's good to check with the lender as well. So that if you know that you're not going to be here, this is not something you should tell your agent in the last minute. This is something that you want to tell them right away in the very beginning. Especially nowadays, you know that how long it takes a lender to react because the volume that they have. So power attorney is a really important thing. And by the way, the person cannot be your power attorney is the person who helped you to handle the transaction. So it cannot be a loan agent, cannot be your real estate agent. Anybody else is okay. Yeah.
A friend, a colleague, anybody's okay, right?
Anybody's okay. Friend, colleague, sister, mother, brother. Okay. Yeah, except that your agent.
Okay.
All right, and I think that pretty much concludes my presentation, the ones that I have. Is there any questions?
Okay, let's see. That's very useful information. Thank you, Richard. I think I have learned a lot from you. So we have been streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and other platforms today. And we have compiled some questions that our viewers have for our guest. One question I have for you, Richard, is any discount for pricing from title company? Okay,
great question. A lot of people want to know that, especially when they're in the transaction, they realize that title company, we're quite expensive. So people are usually asking that question. Can people still see my flyer slide, or did I lose that?
You didn't share that anymore.
Okay.
Sorry, I disabled it. Go ahead and share it again.
Okay.
You can share again, yeah.
Can we see that now?
Yeah.
Okay. For the discount or anything, the title company. Now, I've been in the industry for about 16 years, and I have went to a few different title company. The guidelines are very, very similar, almost the same, because this is a highly regulated industry. And there's quite a few companies running the operation, so the rate has got to a point that it's very competitive. We're insurance companies, so our rates are being calculated. There are actuaries kind of help us to find out the rate and the risk involved in that. So every title company, what we have to do is we have to file our rate to Department of Insurance. So we are not allowed to give any credit, or we're not allowed to charge you more either. Right? Usually the way it works is for every $10,000, there's a corresponding fee to that. So for example, $500,000, we might be charging you $1,509, and $600,000 will be $1,683. And that will be a set fee. There's no room for negotiation. So pricing wise, it's really strict. Every company under strict law that we cannot give any discount, or we cannot charge you more either. Whatever the fee that we file to the state of the Department of Insurance, and that's the fee that we're charging you. There are some special programs and some special circumstances that might save you money, especially you're an investor. And that program is called binder. So binder is something that that could potentially save you money. I'll give you an example. So let's say that if you buy a house in Santa Clara. Now Santa Clara is a seller pay county. So you know that you're gonna sell this property in 2 years. What you can do is you can buy a binder policy. Then 2 years later, this fee, when you're about to sell the property, the title fee could be it will be including that binding policy. The way it works is, for example, let's say that the sell price is $500,000. The premium is $1,509. You can actually buy a binder for 10% more. So instead of $1,509, you pay $1,509 plus $150.90. And when you are selling the property in the future, as a seller of Santa Clara County, you don't have to pay a title premium anymore, except the difference of the future title premium. So in the future, for example, if you sell it for $600,000, at the time, the new rate is $1,683. So minus what you have already paid, which is $1,509, is $174 plus what you have paid 10% more when you purchased the property 2 years ago. You're only paying $324 versus you have to pay a new policy again. So you save $1,300. So that's a great saving tool that if you are an investor yourself, you can buy a binder. What it doesn't include is it does not include the escrow fee. So you have to pay the escrow fee again. It's only on the title insurance side. And also there's a catch to that, which is you have to sell the property within 2 years. Otherwise the binder will no longer be in fact. And also if the binder is only considered complete, the policy is only issued once the second leg is completed, which means that if anything happened during the time before you sell your property, right, you can still make a claim, but the binder will lose its effect.
So that means during the 2 years, if you make a claim and then you want to sell it again in 2 years,
the binder will no longer be there.
You have to pay for the whole premium at that time.
Yes, correct. That's only if you make a claim between, because binder is only considered complete once the second leg completes.
Got it. So the binder is always 10% over the premium, is always 10%, or do you have different levels of that binders?
I cannot speak for all the title company, but the major ones that are in the Bay Area are 10% more, yes.
Okay, and then I have a question because if you are in Santa Clara County, so for example, seller pays for when they sell a house, seller pays for escrow fee and title fees. So it makes sense for the seller to buy the binder so that later on when they pay escrow fee and title fee again, or actually when they buy the property, so they actually pay the binder. I get
What
all
they can do is
confused.
they can ask the seller and say, hey, I might need to sell the house in 2 years, and I can probably pay 10% more. I'll pay that 10%. Since you're paying that title and escrow anyways, I'll offer to pay that 10%, and then I'll become the owner when I'm about to sell the property. I'll go to the same title company, and I can enjoy that vendor.
So basically, when the investor bought the property, so the seller would be paying for the regular premium, the buyer will pay for the 10% premium. And then when that buyer becomes to be the seller again in 2 years, that investor only needs to pay for the difference for the premium, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so that's in Santa Clara County, but how about let's say in San Mateo County?
Okay.
So actually when the buyer bought the property, they paid for the title insurance and also the binder policy. When they resell the property, it's the buyer who's paying for the title insurance. So how does the seller get savings?
Okay, now this is gonna be something that it really takes negotiation, because let's not talk about binder, right? If it's not binder, the buyer is gonna pay the title insurance fee anyways, right?
Yeah.
The buyer is gonna have to pay that. However, if you have a binder, if the buyer chooses to exercise that binder, title company is not charging them, the buyer. So which means the seller will have to negotiate with the buyer and say that, hey, you know what? I have a binder place right here. And instead of paying title company, you're paying title company anyways. But instead of paying title company this $1,500, right? Instead of paying the title company, and you need to pay me.
So on the contract, of course, buyer pay for title insurance fee. So let's use the example, instead of paying for 1683, right? So instead of paying for that amount, so actually the buyer is paying for that 1683.
If not, the buyer is paying for title insurance anyways. If the buyer is not using the binder, exercising the binder, the buyer will have to then pay 1683.
That's true. Yeah. So how does that benefit the investor who paid for the binder to begin with?
And that is why you don't see a lot of people doing that because
I just experienced the transaction in San Mateo County, right? So my buyer actually has to pay for title and escrow fees. And then the seller asked us to keep the transaction in First American Title because that's where they bought the binder.
Right.
So they can enjoy the savings. I'm thinking my buyer is paying for the title insurance. How are they going to enjoy the savings?
They're not unless you're willing to share that with them. so it doesn't do anything to buyer, and that's why if you're in the buyer pay county, for the first buyer to buy that, I don't know if that will be really going to be a saving. First of all, they have to sell it within 2 years, and then
it was an investor's property. So basically, if my buyer paid for the full premium, 1683, in fact, my buyer could have just paid for 324.90, right? So where did the difference go? Did it go to the seller? So the seller actually enjoyed the difference?
No, well, here's the thing, like you cannot think of that the title company is going to give some sort of credit. There's not going to be any money coming from title company. So either your buyer not exercise binder and pay 1683, or the exercise binder paid 324. Either way, the money is not coming out of title company as a refund or anything. So which the seller...
Well, that's understood. I think I understood is the seller actually got the credit from the buyer. Otherwise, why would they insist for us to keep the same title company so that they can enjoy the savings? There's no savings for them because they don't pay.
Yeah, so I would imagine somewhere in the contract, the seller will be saying, hey, you know what? I got this deal. Let's say that if it's a seller market, right? The seller says, I got this. And then instead of buyer, you pay 1683 to title company. You pay 1683 minus 324 to me, and then you pay 324 to the title company.
I think that's probably something happened. Even though it's not in the contract still says buyer pay for title insurance. So you're saying in the buyer paid county, the binder doesn't really benefit the investor.
investors as a seller unless they negotiate something. Otherwise, no, title company is not going to credit anything to the seller if that's what you're asking. No.
That was my understanding. I thought the title company was crediting
No.
to the seller. Otherwise,
No. Yeah.
there's no benefit for them. The benefit should be on the buyer because whatever binder savings is saving on the buyer, right? That's my understanding.
Right. Well, on the other hand, if you have a buyer market, which seller has a hard time to sell the property, and this might be some incentive for the buyer to,
Yes.
yeah, to sell this property, right? But it's really, like I say, you know, this, we don't really promote this program because there are so many variables.
Right. Agreed.
You really don't know that after 2 years, what kind of, number one, what kind of market that is. Number two, you have to sell it within 2 years.
That's right. Yeah. So usually for flippers, that probably works the best. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, great. So, Richard, you want to just cover very quickly about escrow process?
Yeah. Escrow process, just to, if there's not going to be any lender, an escrow process is very, very simple. All right. So what's happened is once you make the initial deposit, all we're waiting is for all the document to come to our branch, such as the HOA doc, if there's any, or any other invoices coming. Once we compile those, in the matter of fact, we can close that as soon as everything's ready. It could be 2 weeks, or it could be less than 2 weeks, or it could be 5 days. We don't like to rush things, right? So even we can do that. We usually try to time it. If it's cash deal, we try to do it 2 weeks. Now, if there's a lender, it would take a lot longer time. Once we get the initial deposit, and you know, you're gonna have all this inspection, and then you're gonna have to wait until the lender get ready to fund us fund us your loan. Let's say that if it's a $1 million transaction, you're borrowing $700,000. Once you make your 3%, then we're gonna wait for lender to process everything. And then once lender is ready to give us the money, you're gonna have to sign a document and then give us your rest of the down payment. That would be $270,000. And then once lenders see that $270,000 in our account, they would then wire their $700,000, and then we'll complete the transaction that way.
Great. I think that covers all our questions here. So thank you so much, Richard. I really appreciate your time.
It's my great pleasure.
Oh, I have one question. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Hey, Richard, I dropped a photo in the chat there. A lot of buyers ask about this. They get this letter after they close. Something about homesteading. You know anything about that?
Homestead?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. And along with that, then some people have started asking me questions such as this title guard. Have you guys heard about it? Like they monitor your title?
Oh, yes. Yeah, is that spam?
No, they're not scam. I think if you look at the envelope, they actually disclose that they're not with the government agency, so they did disclose that. So what it does is they can run the property information for you with a fee. However, if you work with Coco, you can usually get this through Coco for free. You don't have to pay. You don't have to pay them anything. So this is something that, because the way they draft it and make it look like something that's coming from government agency, it looks like something you should have, but in fact, this is just regular information. If you don't want to get this information from Coco, you can actually go down to the county to request the information on any house. So those information could be requested with probably just $20 from county. And on top of that, you already know what your house look like 4 bedroom, 3 baths. There's no need for you to get another property profile on that. So do you need it? If you really want that information, of course, but will I get it? Probably not.
Are you talking about the property characteristics, or you're talking about something different?
That you talk about the home, they talk about that they can, for $90, they get you like a grand deed along with the property profile. So yeah, but then the grand deed is going to be mailed to you. The original copy is going to be mailed to you within 3 to 4 months. So you will get it eventually.
So you don't need their help. You don't need to pay for the extra fee for that.
Are they scam? I can't really say they're a scam because they do provide information.
Okay.
Is the information worth the money? Probably not.
How about homestead?
Homestead?
John, is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
Homestead?
under the chat, I don't know if you can see there's a image file. If you open it up, there's a sample notice that a liar's
Oh, you're talking about the home owner exemption? Is that what you're talking about?
homesteading. Let's see.
Homesteading. So it's like a home exemption, yeah.
Oh,
So
that is legit. Okay, so for you, if that's what you're talking about, you get that from county. All right, so every person, if you use the property as a principal residence, you have $7,000 exemption. All right, and equivalent to your tax money is about like $70 or $80.
so $7,000 of the value, you don't have to pay taxes, right?
Right. Yes, correct. But that's kind of like $70, or if you factor that in, or
You have to file for it, right? If you
yes.
don't, you don't get it.
Yeah, you do have to, because county is not going to assume that this property is occupied by principal, as a principal residence. So yes, you do need to file that. It's very simple. Just follow the instruction and send it back to county. And then the next time your property tax will be reflected that you have, once you see the tax bill, you're going to see minus $7,000. That is legit. And you want to do that.
Yeah, recently a client was calling me and saying that they were investigating a property and realized that property has homestead filing on it, but it was not supposed to be a primary home. So looks like, but they filed for homestead exemption. That's still possible, right? For somebody filed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Imagine you own 2 or 3 houses. Well, I don't suppose this is legal, but just a common think about this, right? And how would, if every county is only governing their own transaction, right? Alameda County, I don't suppose they know somebody filed homestead in San Mateo County. So will people do multiple? I would imagine there are people doing that. Is it worth it for the consequences? I can speak of it, but this definitely you're not. Everybody should have just one principal residence.
What will be the consequence?
I don't know, but dealing with the government within IRS and counties and states probably not a pleasant thing once they realize that this is what you're doing.
And that's a lot of savings anyways, right? So just $70.
No, it's $70 or $80, yeah.
There's one more question. So when reading the preliminary title report, what's the most important thing to look out for?
I will look at for the easements. I think the easements would be something that you really want to pay attention to because it could affect your property value as well. Depends on what kind of easement that is. Because in fact, if there's a pipe or gas pipe underneath the ground, you can't really build anything on top of that. Right? So that kind of, especially nowadays, people really want the ADU. That would shrink your ability of doing so. So I think the easement will be something I'll watch out. And on top of that, easement is something that title company usually, this is a disclosure to you, so you got to understand what kind of easement that is. If you're worried about tax or something, title company is not going to hand you a property if the tax is owed. So I'm actually less concerned of that. If you actually complete a transaction with title company, we'll take care of that before the property transfer, but not the easement. Easement is going to be there, and we tell you on the prelim, you already acknowledge that you received that, whatever that easement is, and that will be your responsibility in the future.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Richard. I think we can turn off the recording, and that's for today's seminar, and we can hang around and for more discussions if anybody wants to stay around.